Hello, my name is Lauren Werner. I'm a master's thesis student in industrial engineering, and today I'm going to be talking to you about this study, Automated Speech Recognition Systems in Older Adults. And this is a literature review. Older adults 65 and plus, in this category, it's only expected to increase. In 2012, it was reported that 43 million people are in this category, and this is expected to double by 2050. Of these people in this category, there are some age-related changes that could increase the potential for perceptual, cognitive, as well as physical challenges. Overall, speech recognition systems are increasing in prevalence in today's society. Some age-related physical changes for older adults when using speech recognition system could be muscle weakness, which can lead to reduced respiratory strength, which ultimately leads to lower respiratory force. It could also lead to reduced tongue strength, which leads to diminished pronunciation of words. As well as in these age changes, you also have vocal cord stiffening, which can lead to high speech pitch. Overall, these lead to increased speech variability and decreased speech rate that older adults can have, and this is particularly important when we're looking at their performance with speech systems. However, there are some potential advantages for older adults in using these speech systems. For example, it could help reduce cognitive and physical workload, as well as it can enable quick information retrieval. Past studies indicate somewhat conflicting results of speech recognition performance for older adults' speech compared to other age groups. Therefore, we conducted our own literature review. We came up with a list of keywords, including speech recognition, text-to-speech, older adults, age, things of that nature. And then we used these keywords to come up with a research line, and we put that in 5 different databases. Overall, this came out to 458 studies, and then we whittled that down to 17 studies that we looked at that are reported in this literature review. All these studies report performance of these speech recognition systems in terms of word error rate, which is weird. This is calculated by the number of substitutions, deletions, and insertions, all divided by the number of substitutions, deletions, and the words correctly recognized. Example. Here's an example. So if the human spoke, "Hello, show me southwest flights," the system picked up, "Hello, show southern flights." As you can see here, there's one deletion, which is me. There's one substitution, which is southern. And then there's 3 words that are correctly recognized: hello, show, and flights. Overall, when we put this in the formula, we get a word error rate of 0.4 or 40%. Overall, in this literature review, we really just focused on the human element of these different speech recognition systems. And there's 2 different kind of areas that we looked at that from. We looked at that in terms of the human component that was used to build these speech systems, and then the human component that was used to test these systems. There's kind of a before and after. We looked at the system speaker type, and then we looked at the training group. So the training group is part of that pre. So we looked at the type of corpus or the type of speech database that they used to develop that speech system. So was that speech database established or wasn't it? How many hours was in that speech database? And how many people, and we broke that down in gender and age, were used to build that speech system, that speech recognition system used. We also looked at if there were any specific speech recognition technology that they used that was established. So as you can see some examples, we also report those if they gave that specific example. We also looked at the testing group. So this is part of that after. So after the speech recognition system is really developed and they finish it, now they go through and they test these systems. So we want to know the number of hours and the number of people the system was actually tested on. And we want to know if it was divided up between gender and age. And then furthermore, we want to know that performance of that tested group, which again is that word error rate that we just talked about. So to give you guys a bit of a better example on how this was really reported, we did a big table of all 17 studies. So I give you an example here of the first two. So one of the main things I do want to point out here is in the far right, in those two columns, you see word error rate for males and word error rate for females. As you can see in that first study, they reported those in a minimum and maximum range. However, in the second study, they reported them in an average. So this is important when we look at the results of the data later. Overall, we noticed a trend in age, gender, and the number of people in the training group with the word error rate, and we did not notice a trend for the number of hours in the training group. So first, we looked at age in general. So we looked at younger to middle-aged adults compared to older adults and their word error rate. As you can see here, younger to middle-aged adults have a slightly better word error rate than older adults. So next, we wanted to break down this category of older adults. So we looked at studies that reported older adults in terms of 60 years and plus, 70 years and plus, and 80 years and plus. So I do want to point out here that if you look at that minimum range, you see that it keeps increasing as you go from 60 to 80. So while 60 and 70 are pretty comparable with their word error rate, we do notice a significant change with word error rate when it's 80 and plus. Next, we looked at gender. So only 7 of the 17 studies actually reported the wear rate and gender. However, so out of those 7, 4 of them reported a lower wear rate for females. So as you can see from how I'm going to report these from the coming slides, I'm always going to put those studies that reported their wear rate in a minimum and maximum range at the top, and then those studies that reported a wear rate average, those are going to be on the bottom. But overall, as you can see here, females typically do, and these ranges report having a lower wear range than the males. Next, we wanted to look at this across age. So we divided these findings across younger to middle-aged adults and older adults. Overall, you can still see the general trend still holds true, that females do perform better than males with these systems. Next, we looked at the number of people and the training corpus. So the number of people used to train that speech system that was used to create these speech recognition systems. So we looked at the studies that reported having less than or equal to 400 people that trained that system, and then studies that reported 400 or more people used to train that speech database system. As you can see, the studies that report having 400 or more people to train that system actually have a lower wear rate in general. So they perform better. Next, we looked at the number of hours in that training corpus, or the number of hours that was used to train that speech database system. The studies that we looked at this in terms of the studies that reported less than or equal to 100 hours, and then the studies that reported between 100 and 202. As you can see from this, it would appear that the studies that have between 100 hours and 202 hours that was used to train the speech database system had a better word error rate than the studies that used less than or equal to 100 hours. However, we do have 2 studies that show some conflicting results. You see that one study reported having 1,000 hours in their trained corpus, or their trained database, and then another study reported 9 hours. As you can see, the 9-hour study had a much smaller word error rate than the 1,000-hour. So overall, we did not report this as a trend when we're looking at how older adults performed with the word error rate. Overall, these speech systems do perform better for younger to middle-aged adults as well as female users. These systems also have a higher accuracy when they're built with a speech database that is at least 400 people. More research needs to be done to develop a more comprehensive list of factors to really understand how speech recognition accuracy works with older adults. Overall, we had a few limitations. I do want to point out again that this study really only looked at the human element that was used to build these systems and then test these systems. We don't look at any hardware or software components of these speech systems. And we also don't report the type of machine learning that was used by these different speech systems. So for future work, we would consider looking at software and hardware components of these speech systems, what type of machine learning model was used for these systems, and as well as consider the user's past experience with speech recognition technology, because that could also play an effect in how they modify their voice and overall how that system performs when they speak. All right, thank you guys so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks.